So if you had to say top 5 things that great for deer to eat, what could you just give us?
Sure. Well, I'll give you 5. Let's see. I'll break it up by forages. So I'll break it up by the native plants. And then I'll break it up with the forages, planted forages. So I'd say top.
I'm writing
5,
this down.
Yeah. So top 5 native forages, without question, they're going to eat smilax. If you're familiar with the greenbrier, now there is a couple of different species of greenbrier, and there are a few that they do not eat. So the really, really coarse and waxy ones that have the really, really sharp stickers, like lance leaf greenbrier, they won't eat that too well. But most of your greenbriers, that's going to be one of the first things we look at when we get out on a property. We're going to say, man, they're really just eating. They're hammering the greenbrier, but they're not eating X. Some of the bad stuff. And so, greenbrier is one that I'd immediately go to right off the bat. They're always going to kind of eat greenbrier. Next, you start getting into the broadleaf plants, and there's a few that they're always going to eat. Believe it or not, they eat like prickly lettuce. So if a plant has spines, people look at it and go, well, they don't want to eat that. Well, you think about the adaptation of plants; they probably adapted to grow them spines because they were good to eat. Yeah, things was eating them. They're good to eat. So believe it or not, they'll eat blackberry. Believe it or not, they'll eat poison ivy. You think about it. Why is poison ivy? Because it tastes good. Things were eating it. So they'll eat the stew out of poison ivy. But poke salad, which has some toxicity, they'll actually eat the tar out of that. They eat ragweed. Is a really good native browse. And we'll almost always see them, especially in the spring, eating ragweed. And Bidens, they'll eat some of the wildflowers that you guys are familiar with. And then, of course, from the cultivated plant side of things, there's nothing a deer wants to eat more than a soybean. Everybody knows that, right? That's pretty common.
They don't make it very long.
No, that's just a fact. There's some things that are, but then, after that, if you get into, that's just what I would call what is called a summer annual. If you get into the perennial forages, we don't grow it much around here, but they'll absolutely eat the tar out of alfalfa. They will eat your clovers really well. In the summertime, they're going to eat joint vetch really well. The cereal grains, which really carry a lot of our production through the winter, so wheat, oats, cereal, rye, those aren't really highly preferred. They just make a lot at a certain time of the year when the deer need groceries. So if they're left to their own devices, they're not going to eat a whole lot of those grasses if they've got an abundance of other things to eat. But deer diet is really funky, right? So people all the time, and I see this all the time with people that want to feed, bagged feed in a feeder. They'll say, well, I need this 40% protein, whatever stuff. And, and I don't think there's really a 40%, but there's high protein stuff that they'll want to put out. But at the end of the day, deer are going to have to balance their diet. They're just like us. My favorite food in the whole entire world is tomato sandwich. When the tomatoes come in, you know what I'm talking about, man? I'd rather eat a tomato sandwich on the first 2 pieces of white bread. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But if I eat 3 of those in a day, my stomach says,
we got to go somewhere else.
We're going to have to change gears. Can't have 3 of them, guy. So at the end of the day, that's what happens to deer too. So they can get too much of a good thing. So here we are talking about the good things they need to eat, but there's a whole lot of other things in the environment that deer also eat, and what they're doing is balancing out that diet. They're trying to get some roughage. They're trying to get some different, and they do have a little bit of nutritional wisdom. It's not like they'll go in and say, well, that wasn't enough protein, they've got to do something different. But at the, they're not reading the back of the label.
They ain't got the label.
Ain't got the labels. But at the end of the day, they do have nutritional wisdom for things like sodium, and they can avoid things like sulfur. They know, just like us, when you eat something that don't taste good, they won't spit it out. High sulfur foods, they will avoid high lignin, so real tough stuff. It gives them post-ingestive consequences. So they do have some really neat selection mechanisms for stuff that they eat. It's really cool, when you really get to looking at it.
So where does your acorns and your persimmons and your muscadines and all that fall in?
Yeah, I left that out. So we would put that, so you can put forages, I guess, or deer foods into broad categories. And I mainly just talked about browse or forage, I guess you might say, with the ones that I just talked about. Another broad category would be mast, and that's what you're talking about. So you've got soft mast, which is your fruits, persimmons and whatnot, and then hard mast, which is acorns, and pecans and, a whole lot of other stuff. So deer can live without mast, but in some areas, deer are entirely mast dependent. So if you go into the Appalachians in West Virginia and those areas of the world, almost an entirely mast-dependent herd. Big acorn crop, they eat a bunch of acorns, and then they have to just tough it out through the winter because it's all those closed canopy, hardwood-type forest. So in Mississippi, we have a really diverse forest community, And we absolutely can see deer persist and be very successful in the absence of acorns, right? But where they have acorns, they like them, you know. And
we've noticed.
Oh yeah, man, yeah.
Especially the yellow ones, huh?
Yeah. Oh, dude, he got you there. No, game warden joke. No, anyway. There, you know, so there are some preference for different acorns, but that's really very difficult to assess for a lot of reasons, and it almost isn't worthwhile to study on because we have such variable acorn availability. Right, so 1 year we'll have a boom in white oak, and then 1 year we'll have a boom in red oak. Right now, we should have a really good soft mass. So you were talking about persimmons, man. The plum crop in June was phenomenal, as many plums as I've ever seen. Blackberries look good. We had elderberries. We had mulberry back in May. The elderberries are out right now. They look really good. I imagine we're going to have persimmon. Now, I hadn't really paid a lot of attention to it. Honey locust right now, the bean trees are loaded. I mean, I'm talking about mass. Looks good.
Deer like those?
Oh yeah. They have you ever really smelled one when they're ripe, man? They've got a very unique.
We've got one or two on the property out there, and you just take it and you break it. It's almost got like a slimy texture to it, and it's got I don't know how to describe the smell of it.
It's unique. There's not hardly anything that really smells just like the honey locust pods, but they absolutely will eat those. But that's one of those things that makes a whole lot and then it's gone.
Yeah.
So it's none of those things. So mass is good. It's great. If you've got acorn trees, good. If we're managing a forest, I sure as heck ain't going to cut my hardwood out. You know what I mean? I want to try to keep acorn trees. But mass is not what carries the deer. You know, it's a really good thing to have, and we want to capitalize it on where we got it. But what's carrying them is that summer browse, that summer forage, and then hopefully we've got some winter forages as part of a diverse habitat management plan, you know, to be able to carry them.
So